Welcome on our guest line, U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham from the great state of South Carolina. Senator Graham, Happy New Year, sir. How you been?
Good, Mike. I'm doing good.
Good.
Ready to get back to work here.
I know you are, and I appreciate you taking a few minutes out of your very busy schedule to visit with us. One of your colleagues, drew a blank here, Senator Cornyn, said that Hagel is absolutely the wrong guy, that he is profoundly wrong to be the next Secretary of Defense. You've been very vocal in your criticism of this selection. Is this more an undercurrent of the sort of the Bush policy with regards to the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, as opposed in regards to Hagel's criticism of Iraq, or is it more than that? Give us an overview, as only you can, about why so many are opposing Chuck Hagel to be the next Secretary of Defense.
Well, number one, the president's choice of picking him indicates to me that he's looking for a fight in his second term at every turn, saying he won't negotiate on the debt ceiling. Picking Chuck Hagel to be Secretary of Defense, I think, says a lot about what we're going to have to deal with in the next 4 years. But as to Senator Hagel, my objection is not because he disagrees with me. That's not it. John Kerry disagrees with me a lot, and I'll probably vote for him. My objection is that Chuck Hagel's positions on Iran and Israel are dangerously out of the mainstream. He was one of 12 senators who refused to sign a letter to the European Union asking that Hezbollah, a Shiite group in Lebanon, be designated a terrorist organization. He has urged that Israel directly negotiate with Hamas, another terrorist organization who lobs rockets into Israel to kill the Israeli children. And he was one of 2 senators who voted against sanctions against Iran, saying we should have direct negotiations. So my view is that his policies toward Iran and Israel are, quite frankly, out of the mainstream. And you heard the foreign minister of Iran say today, choosing Chuck Hagel would be a step forward. I think it would probably be a step backward.
I mean, and the president has to know what kind of fight he's going to have on his hands over Chuck Hagel, does he not?
Oh, absolutely he does. And I guess and the question is, Chuck Hagel said the surge in Iraq was the biggest foreign policy blunder since Vietnam. Well, Chuck Hagel served with distinction in Vietnam. He was an enlisted man, twice wounded, and it's not a personal thing between me and Senator Hagel. I actually like him. I like people who stand up for what they believe, but your judgment does matter. He couldn't have been more wrong about Iraq. He's talking about the Defense Department being bloated after we've cut $489 billion. And look at the times in which we live in. The Iranians are marching toward a nuclear weapon as I speak. Israel's never been more isolated in the world than they are now. We've got to make decisions about Afghanistan in the next few weeks. So I really do believe that Chuck Hagel's foreign policy approach is leading from behind on steroids at a time when America needs to be leading from the front.
You mentioned, Senator Graham, Vietnam, and you're going to have to forgive me, but I have just such a personal dislike for John Kerry, and I just can't.
I know.
I mean, I can't shake the image of what he did to his fellow soldiers in Vietnam with his Winter Soldier testimony. But you said that you'd likely support him to be Secretary of State. Can you walk us through that?
Sure.
And is that difficult?
I'd be glad to.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, it's not about saying things I don't like. It's about, when you talk to John about his statements during Vietnam, he's since apologized. But John Kerry is truly in the left camp on foreign policy. He's got a mixed record, but he's been Foreign Relations Committee Chairman for 20 years. He's been actually pretty good on Syria, trying to push the administration to do more. Clearly, he's a qualified man. I think his views are in the mainstream. When you don't agree with me, doesn't mean you're out of the mainstream. But Chuck Hagel is different in this regard. He served with distinction in Vietnam. But I think he views every foreign policy issue through the lens of Vietnam as a war we should have never gotten into, as a kind of a quagmire. The Iranians present a different threat than the Vietnamese. Afghanistan and Iraq are different times. We're in a war on terror, not a Cold War, but a hot war. And not to understand that you've got to get Afghanistan right, and to suggest that the Iranians are really misunderstood that you should negotiate with these thugs, and you can't say that Hezbollah is a terrorist organization, and asking the Israelis to negotiate with Hamas, a group that's trying to kill their children, is, to me, just disconnected from the threats we face.
It's pretty shocking, Senator Lindsey Graham, about how it's shocking how the lack of support for Israel is sort of condoned or supported by the mainstream media, isn't it? It's almost fashionable not to support Israel.
Not only is it fashionable at liberal cocktail parties to consider the Palestinian victims and the Israeli thugs, look at the United Nations, a body that's supposed to be trying to secure the peace.
Yep.
And look at the way the United Nations treats the state of Israel.
That's right.
You know, Israel's not without fault, but they're our strongest ally in the region. The people who are trying to destroy them also want to destroy us. And now it's not the time to send mixed messages. And my problem is that I think President Obama's real attitude regarding national security is probably more in line with Chuck Hagel.
Yeah.
And when he talks tough, it's just talk.
Yeah. It's going to be quite a fight. Well, listen, I'm apartment hunting right now in New York City. That land on the east side where the UN building is, that'd make a fine condo. I'm telling you, it'd be great condominiums, great views of the East River and everything.
Well, I can tell you this about the UN. You know, they admitted the Palestinians in kind of a Vatican state status.
Right.
If the Palestinians file a complaint in the International Criminal Court because of this new status against the Israeli Defense Forces, calling them war criminals every time they put a missile battery behind a schoolhouse and Israel has to defend herself, I will lead the effort to cut off funding to the United Nations because it would no longer be a constructive body.
We'll be right there with you. Senator Lindsey Graham, we need your voice. I know how busy you are. We so appreciate you spending a few minutes with us between appointments here on the Mike Gallagher Show. Happy New Year, sir.
Happy New Year.
Thank you. Senator Lindsey Graham joining